Welcome. It is The Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz, Ben Ferguson with you, and this may be one of the most complicated shows we've ever done. If you're joining us on the radio, it's so nice to have you as well. We had done the show, and now we are doing a new update to the show. I just got off a plane from Israel, and we're going to talk about that in next week's episodes because we have so much breaking news to talk about right now. And Senator, this is all going to be about the shutdown, but also the elections that took place in New York City and around the country as well. Where are we, and what are we going to be covering with the shutdown today?
Well, that's exactly right. We're going to let you know exactly where we are on the government reopening, on negotiations. The shutdown continues. We're going to tell you where things stand. That's why we're doing this episode at 11:50 a.m. on Friday, just to get the latest breaking news. We're also going to talk in particular about flight delays and what's going on at the FAA and how that impacts you if you or your family are traveling. And then we're going to do a deep dive into the election, in particular in New York City, Comrade Mandami, and what it means, what it says, who voted for him, what the numbers show, and it actually reveals a lot about what's happening in New York and what's happening all across the country. All of that on today's pod.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I want to talk to you real quick about our amazing sponsor, and it is Patriot Mobile. I just went to Israel, and people ask me all the time, how good is the coverage? Because you want to stay with the big mobile companies. I've been saying now for years, and they've been in business for well over a decade, that it is amazing coverage. If you've got coverage right now you love, you're going to love your coverage of Patriot Mobile even more, but you get rid of the woke left agenda. I am proud to report to you that my phone worked in Israel. I traveled internationally and had zero issues with my cell service. Whether I was in Bethlehem or literally calling from Gaza at the Gaza Strip, this is not a joke, I had amazing coverage. Everywhere that I went, I flew back to the U.S., my phone worked perfectly, my emails, all the data. I was posting on social media from my phone. Tel Aviv last night, it was phenomenal. So if you're worried about coverage, don't be. Now, why should you switch to Patriot Mobile? Not only are you probably going to save real money every month, but then the magic happens. A portion of your bill every month goes back to support conservative causes, candidates, organizations that fight for our First and our Second Amendment rights, the rights of unborn children. And they do something that's really special. They stand with our men and women in uniform, whether it's police officers or law enforcement in general, or our men and women that fight for this country overseas. They stand with our wounded warriors and our fallen families who have lost a loved one so that there is the financial need and aid that is needed. So that's why I want you to switch to Patriot Mobile, because every time you pay that bill, you're making a real difference. Now, I also want to give you a free month of service. Go to patriotmobile.com/verdict. That's patriotmobile.com/verdict. Or call them 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT for a free month of service. Switch today. Make a difference. patriotmobile.com/verdict or 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with a promo code VERDICT. All right, Senator, so we're sitting here Friday, mid-morning. Where are we with this government shutdown? Because it's just insane. This is the longest shutdown ever. And there's Democrats that are celebrating this right now. Let's be clear about that as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's been a whole lot of hurry up and wait. We are expected sometime today, sometime on Friday, to vote yet again on another bill to reopen the government. The plan is to have a vote that has three appropriations bills, has the ag appropriation bills, that also includes food stamps, a bill that is the military construction appropriation bill and the Veterans Administration, and the ledge branch appropriation bills. Those are three appropriation bills that passed with big bipartisan majorities out of the Appropriations Committee. The plan is to put that on the floor of the Senate today, along with a continuing resolution that would extend the rest of government and vote on it. And the amazing thing is, this was the Democrats, their ask. They wanted to do this. Now, I think there's a very real possibility the Democrats will vote it down later today. We don't know. The Democrats are having a vigorous battle within their conference. At lunch yesterday, they were apparently going at it. And there's a chunk of Democrats who recognize that this is really hurting a lot of people. This is hurting. It's now been over a month. You've got federal workers who are not getting paid. You've got Border
Yeah.
Patrol agents who are not getting paid. You've got ICE agents who are not getting paid. You've got FBI agents who are not getting paid. You have TSA agents who are not getting paid. You have air traffic controllers who are not getting paid. And this keeps going and going and going. And so there are about a dozen Democrats who keep talking to the Republicans and saying, okay, we're getting ready to be ready to open the government. Here's the problem. Tuesday was a horrible election for America, but if you're a left-wing radical, it was a great election for you, and the left-wing radicals are now energized. So you've got the crazies in the Democrat Party who are standing up to their colleagues saying, this shutdown is fantastic. Let's keep the government shut down more because the crazies are winning. And so that battle, I don't know how that battle will shake out. But
that's the battle, by the way, the Democrats are having right now. That's why we had to update this show. They're fighting right now. There's a significant group of donors, supporters, political operatives that are calling and saying, do not open this government, guys. We believe this is good for us and hurting Donald Trump in the White House, and be damned who hurts the American people.
Look, and in hearings, I mean, I had multiple Democrats yesterday who would say their talking point. They say, well, Republicans have the White House, Republicans control the Senate, Republicans control the House. This is your fault. That's their talking point. And as I responded to Ben Ray Lujan, Democrat from New Mexico, who said that, I said, every witness, when they go and testify in a court of law, they're required to take an oath and an oath to testify to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And what Mr. Lujan said, each of the pieces was accurate. He told the truth, but he failed in the second of those, the whole truth, because he omitted the central issue. And the central issue is this. In order to pass a government funding bill under the Senate rules, you need 60 votes. Now, Senator Lujan and every Democrat knows that. We only have 53 Republicans. That means we need at least 7 Democrats to open the government. Again, they know that. The reason the government is shut down, 14 different times the Republicans, we have voted to open the government. 14 separate times the Democrats have voted to keep it shut down. They are filibustering right now, funding the government. They know that, and they just omit the facts. They say, well, Republicans are in charge, and there's a shutdown, so it's your fault. Ha ha. And it is profoundly dishonest. And understand, they know they're being dishonest, but you know who also knows they're being dishonest? ABC News, NBC News, CBS News, CNN, MSNBC,
and they're pushing
and none of them are covering it.
Yeah,
they're all like, well, the Republicans shut the government down, and they know they're lying, and they're doing it nonetheless because they think it gives political benefits to the Democrats.
Yeah, and it's facts be damned. Let me ask you this question as well. Do you believe that the American people are now at the point where they're so frustrated that this becomes a political liability for the presidency because of what the media is doing? And I want your initial thoughts on that.
Look, I think people are very frustrated, and it's about to get much, much worse because flight delays are about to get dramatically worse. And in just a moment, I'm going to tell you about a conversation I had with the administrator of the FAA as to why flight delays are going to get so much worse and how it's going to impact you or your family. If you're flying anywhere, if you're flying for vacation, if you're flying for work, this is going to impact you in a big, big way. And I hope that will finally pressure the Democrats to do the right thing and let us reopen the government.
Democrats have clearly orchestrated this to inflict pain. Now, I was flying Thursday night into Friday internationally, coming into 2 major airports, one from Tel Aviv into Newark, and then Newark to IAH, Houston. The problems you could see as soon as we landed in Newark. We landed there about 3 a.m., and the lines were outside, and there were people that were crying when we were changing your bags. You grab your bags for international, you go back and recheck them in for domestic. People that had been there overnight. People were sleeping in a lot of the corridors of the airport. That was very clear. There was a breakdown. There was starting to be a breakdown. The lines were insanely long as well when you're going through security. And you can see Democrats are cheering this, thinking this will be a breaking point for the American people. When I arrived in Houston, it was also turning into what I refer to as that holiday-esque type chaos. You've ever flown at Thanksgiving or Christmas, New Year's, you know what I'm talking about. That is the feel that you're starting to get in the airports, I think, in a lot of places nationwide. This is all by design by the Democrats, hoping you'll just throw your hands up and say enough, make a deal, Republicans, and just give in to whatever they want so I can go back to my normal life.
So let me give you some facts and hard data behind that. There are roughly 50,000 TSA agents. Many of them are going into work every day. They're not being paid. They missed their last paycheck. They're not being paid. That means that they're trying to figure out how to pay their mortgage, how to pay their rent, how to feed their kids, how to pay their basic bills. There are roughly 14,000 air traffic controllers across the country. Many of them are going into work as well. They're not being paid. They missed their last paycheck. The consequence, we've seen thousands upon thousands of flights canceled. We've seen many more flights delayed. And just this week, the FAA announced a mandatory 10% reduction on air traffic in the 40 largest airports in America. Now, yesterday, I did a call with the administrator of the FAA, and he gave some more details. So the 40 airports in Texas, that includes Bush Airport in Houston, it includes Hobby Airport in Houston, it includes DFW Airport in Dallas, and it includes Dallas Love Field. So those are the 4 Texas airports, but it's the 40 biggest airports in the country. Now, here's what the FAA told us, and this was a call with me, with Maria Cantwell, who's the ranking member of the Senate Commerce Committee, the senior Democrat, and then the same two, the top Republican and Democrat in the House Committee that has jurisdiction over the FAA. Administrator Bedford said the safety data started to get worse last week. Last Friday, which was Halloween, half of the busiest 30 air traffic control facilities were short-staffed. That included New York, Austin, Newark, Phoenix, Washington, Nashville, Dallas, and Denver. Listen to this statistic. Nearly 80%, 80% of the air traffic controllers in New York City called out. In other words, they didn't show up to work. This is Chuck Schumer's home jurisdiction. Nearly 80% of the controllers did not come into work. Delays were dramatic as a result. Here's the aggregate data. This is the whole national airspace system. The aggregate data looked okay, but deaggregated data, so when they broke it down at the top 40 airports, painted a different picture. Here's a stat that is very concerning. Pilots filed more than 500 voluntary safety reports about air traffic control problems they were encountering.
500.
500.
500. Wow.
More than 500. The FAA continually tracks data, and they did the right thing by identifying a trend. And the controllers, they are overworked, they are fatigued. You have many fewer controllers who are responsible for keeping people safe. It is already an incredibly high-stress job. And the way the reductions are going to work, airlines will incrementally reduce flights. So they're reducing flights by 4% today, by 6% on Tuesday, by 8% on Thursday, and then 10% reductions on Friday. So what does that mean math-wise? There are roughly 45,000 commercial flights a day, and that means nearly 5,000 flights are going to be canceled every single day if the shutdown extends. Now, the Department of Transportation is requiring the airlines to give full refunds, but 5,000 flights a day, that's going to impact, if you assume 100 people on each flight, and many flights have more than 100 people, but if you assume 100 people on each flight, that is 500,000 people a day.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a low number.
I'm sure it's a low number, but it's easy math. I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician. 500,000 people a day are going to have their flights canceled because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats refuse to pay the salaries of the air traffic controllers. And listen, a senior Democrat aide told Politico that the Democrats will keep the government shut down until, quote, until planes start falling from the sky. Wow. This shutdown is dangerous. That's not funny. That's not a good thing to joke about. We did see one plane crash already of a UPS plane, and God forbid that Democrat staffer's projection comes true, but the Democrats are playing with fire. They are gambling with people's lives, and we need to pay the damn air traffic controllers. And the American people are paying the price of this petulant political stuff.
And to be clear, you guys have had the ability, if Democrats would have said yes, to pay them and keep them working, correct?
Yeah, we actually had a separate vote. So Ron Johnson had a bill that said pay essential workers. It was very simple. It said everyone who has to come into work, and that includes air traffic controllers, they should get paid. We should not freeze their paycheck. And you know what happened? The Democrats' party line voted against it, said, nope, we're not going to pay the federal workers that we're making come into work. We're not going to pay the air traffic controllers. And the reason they do that is because they know the press will lie for them and just blame it all on Trump. It's a straight-up vote. The Republicans are voting to open the government. The Democrats are voting to shut it down, and yet they're lying with the media's happy complicity.
It's truly incredible, and it's sick. And that staffer, Democratic staffer, remember that quote. That is a very important quote, and this is all being done by design. They could have stopped it. They could have fixed it. And they did not. We got a lot more to talk about, including the election in New York and Mamdani. That's coming up for you in a moment. But don't forget, download Verdict with Ted Cruz wherever you get your podcast. If you're listening on radio, we do this show 3 days a week. It is free. You can tell Siri or Alexa, play Verdict with Ted Cruz. It will do it for you. Also, you can watch us on YouTube as well, as we do the show as a video pod on YouTube and Facebook. So grab that as well if you want to watch us. We'll take a very quick break. Ben Ferguson with you as well. It's Verdict with Ted Cruz. All right, so let's break down the election. It was a, quote, disaster. The media was just thrilled of what happened on election night. Mamdani is the one, though, that I want to really focus on for a second. He is a communist. He's a proud communist. He went back to his core beliefs in his victory speech, basically yelling at Donald Trump and saying, we are a communist city. The red apple literally now is red apple of communism. Breaking this down, this seems to be a point where Democrats are actually almost doubling down on this type of extremism in their party. I think this is actually going to grow between now and the midterms, and I want your reaction to what we learned.
Well, Comrade Mandami is the face of the Democrat Party now. And I got to say, the election results this week, they were a disaster. They were an absolute blowout. What is striking is several things. Number one, turnout was exceptionally high among the left-wing base, and that's a real warning sign for next year, for the midterms. The left showed up in massive numbers. They're pissed. They hate Donald Trump, and that anger is dangerous. That anger is motivating. And too many folks on the right, too many kind of in the common sense middle, stayed home. And I will tell you, if you look historically, all right, let's go back to 2008. 2008, Barack Obama's elected. As a result, a lot of folks on the right, you and me included, were really unhappy. We didn't like Barack Obama's policies. We were pissed off. 2010 was a massive tidal wave year. It was the Tea Party wave, and it was in large part because those on the right were particularly energized and angry. Fast forward to 2012. 2012, Barack Obama is reelected president. And the reaction again, 2014 was another wave election, a huge election. We won 9 Senate seats. We retired Harry Reid as majority leader. We won the biggest majority in the House since 1928. And it was because, again, those on the right were angry, they were energized, they were contributing money, they volunteered, and those on the left were complacent. By the way, fast forward to 2018. Donald Trump had just been elected in 2016. 2018 was a very good Democrat year. We lost a bunch of seats. Why? Because the left was really energized, and folks on the right were a little bit complacent. This week's election day suggests that we're in real danger of that happening again in 2026, that the left, I'll tell you on fundraising, the left is outraising the right anywhere between 3-1 and 4-1. That is really, really dangerous. And the turnout in Virginia, the left showed up in much bigger numbers. The turnout in New Jersey, the left showed up in much bigger numbers. The turnout in New York City, the left turned out in much bigger numbers. Now, Ben, I'll tell you one of the most interesting, do you know what demographic was dominated by the radical left wing on Election Day?
This is shocking because you and I, we geek out on the political stuff and data after elections. Young people in the Democratic Party were really ready to go vote.
Yeah, but let me be more precise. Young women. And let me give you some stats. In New York City, among young women 18 to 29, 81% voted for Comrade Mamdani.
18 to 29. Wow.
In New Jersey, among young women, 80% voted for Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, in New Jersey, of young women. In Virginia, 78% of young women voted for Abigail Spanberger. It was dominant. And by the way, to give you a comparison, because yes, young people went left, but there was a big gender gap. So, young women in New York, 81% for Mandami. Young men, 64% for Mandami. So almost a 20-point gender gap. How about New Jersey? Young women, 80% for Mikey Sherrill. 54% of young men. So a 26% gender gap in New Jersey. How about Virginia? 78% for Spanberger of young women. Just 56% of young men in Virginia. So we saw that this was a race where the single most overwhelming demographic was young women, which was so overwhelmingly lopsided that it helped drive the results on Election Day.
You know, when you think about this, and then it goes back to, okay, what was the messaging that was connecting with young women to have them come out in these numbers? Or was it not so much of a message? And this is part of the breakdown of trying to figure out what you learned from an election to make sure before the midterms we can course correct it. Or was it just that the left and women in the Democratic Party were so motivated compared to conservative women? I call it the Trump slump. You feel like your party's in power. You feel like they're doing the things that you asked them to do. Donald Trump is putting in complacency, but you feel comfortable because you're like,
things are good.
We just won an election. Yeah, things are great.
Yep.
Donald Trump's doing what he said he was going to do. So when you look at it, was it issue-based based on data that we've seen, or was it more just the other side was so angry that Donald Trump won and they wanted to win so badly to send a middle finger to the president that they showed up in these record numbers and they voted for their candidate?
Yeah, we don't have that data yet. There will be time to break that out, but we don't have it right now. But I'll give you another aspect in New York City. So there was a massive difference based on whether you were a longtime New Yorker or you were new to the city. So if you're a New York voter and you had been in New York City, you lived in New York City less than 5 years, what percent of the people who lived in New York City less than five years do you think voted for Comrade Mandani?
Got to be overwhelmingly high.
83%. All right.
Yeah.
How about 5 to 10 years? What do you think 5 to 10 years?
I would say it's probably still fairly high, but not as high as that first group.
76%.
Wow.
Okay, let's go 10 years or more, but not born in New York City. What do you think the percentage is?
Above 50%?
54. So it drops from 76, 5 to 10 years, to 54. How about I was born in New York City, which, by the way, is 47% of the voters were born in New York City. What do you think? What percent of the vote do you think Mandani got of people born in New York City?
I'm going to guess below 50%.
34%. Cuomo got 45%. So Cuomo beat Mandani by 11 points among people born in New York. But among people who lived in New York less than 5 years, Mandani beat him 83% to 15%. So it is overwhelmingly, look.
There's a clear rallying cry from Mamdani, and he did this in his campaigning. He did it, by the way, in his victory speech. He said that New York City is a city of immigrants. In other words, if you came here recently, I'm your guy. The establishment, the old school, the American citizen, you're not a priority in New York City anymore. This reminds me an awful lot of what we were talking about 10 years ago in major cities in the UK. We are seeing a lot of those same type of results now in New York City.
Yeah, and by the way, there's also a significant educational differential. All right, so if you're in New York and you had an advanced degree, what percent of the vote do you think Mamdani got?
Advanced degree, I would say maybe around 50% or below.
57%. Advanced degree, 57%. How about bachelor's degree?
Oh, gosh, I'm going to go maybe even lower.
57%. So advanced and bachelor's both tied at 57. How about associate's degree?
I would say higher.
45%. By the way, Cuomo got 48. So if you had an associate's degree, Mandani lost. How about
Okay.
some college, so you don't have an associate's degree?
Mandani, my gut is it would go even higher. But you're saying I'm wrong.
You're wrong. Some college, Mandani 40%, Cuomo 48%. How about high school graduate?
See, I would have thought high school graduate would be 70+% for Mandani. You're
Nope.
telling me that's
Nope.
wrong. This is
Mandani got
breaking the normal model.
okay. Of high school graduates, Mandani got 39%, Cuomo got 47%, and finally, no high school degree, so didn't even graduate high school.
I mean, clearly based on the trend now, the majority vote against Mandani that didn't have a high school degree.
So no high school degree, 40% voted for Mandani, 49% for Cuomo. So Cuomo beat Mandani by 9 points. So who elected Comrade Mandani? It is the smarty pants, college educated, advanced degrees. It is the rich who elected Mandani. By the way, working class, look, if you've got a GED, if you've got a high school degree, they're like, we don't want a socialist. These people are nuts. And it is the rich New Yorkers who look, I'm not an armchair psychologist,
So
but
this was
that
the
is who
elitists.
elected.
This is the Soroses.
It is the Soroses, by the way, the same Comrade Mandami who said we should have no billionaires, also happily tweeted out a picture. Actually, Alex Soros tweeted out a picture. So proud to be a New Yorker. The American dream continues. Congrats, Mayor, with a picture of the two of them together. This is the same guy who said no billionaires, well, except for the billionaires that funded the communist takeover of New York City.
This is going to be very interesting data for conservatives around the country to use as they're moving forward in the midterms because the data there is shocking. It is important to study it, and it's very powerful to see, like you said, who elected this guy. It's not what you normally would think. And, Senator, one of the other things that we're looking at with this exit poll data and what we're witnessing is that the demographics here made the difference in this election. Dive into a couple more interesting points that you mentioned to me as well.
So, look, one of the interesting things is the breakdown by religion. So, among Protestants or other Christians, what percent do you think Mandani got?
Among Protestants or Christians, I would say it would be well below 50%.
43% and 48% voted for Cuomo. So, Protestants or other Christians, Cuomo beat him. How about among Catholics?
I would hope lower than 50.
It was actually lower than Protestants. It was 33% of Catholics voted for Mandani, 52% voted for Cuomo. So Catholics, which is 27% of the vote in New York, went by 19 points for Cuomo. How about Jewish voters? This is a fascinating one.
So, being in Israel all week long, and this was something that was talked about everywhere I went in Israel, they couldn't believe that anybody that's Jewish would vote for a jihadist advocate in Mandani, and yet the shocking polling data, I'm guessing, is going to show that there were a, quote, significant amount of Jewish people that voted for Mandani, and it has blown the minds of everybody in Israel this week.
32% of Jewish voters in New York City voted for an open jihadist who says globalize the Intifada. 64% voted for Cuomo, but 32% of Jewish voters voted for Mandani. How about other? And other, I suspect, is overwhelmingly Muslim, maybe some Hindu, but predominantly Muslim. What percentage?
I'm assuming it's got to be very high voting for Mandani.
71%. 24% voted for Cuomo. Now, of the total New York voters, that's 14% of the electorate, but 71% of other voted for him. And how about none? So you don't have any religion.
I would say also very high then.
76% for Mandani, 20% for Cuomo. So it was the other, which is going to be predominantly Muslim, and the atheists and agnostics who elected him. Now, family income, this is fascinating. Under $30,000 a year, total family income, what do you think the breakdown was?
See, I would have guessed that would have been a very high number for Mandani, but based on what you said earlier, I'm actually going to go the opposite direction and say they actually did not vote for this guy.
You are right. People making under $30,000 family income, 42% voted for Mandani, 48% voted for Cuomo. So Mandani lost the people under 30,000.
Let's just break that down for a half a second. Mandani being, hey, everything's going to be free, the government's going to fix all your problems, the government's going to take care of you, this is communism. the youngest, hardest working in New York weren't buying that BS. They were saying, we don't believe you. And they voted against him because they said, we don't want that form of government. That is a very interesting takeaway here.
It is. Now, the next several income bands, 30,000 to 50,000, Mamdani got 53%. 50,000 to 100,000, Mamdani got 56%. 100,000 to 200,000, Mamdani got 55%. 200,000 to 300,000, Mamdani got 49%. And so he won every income group between 30,000 and 300,000. And then 300,000 or more, Mamdani got 33% and 62% voted no. So the people who voted against Mamdani,
the people that are really rich are evil, right? That's part of what he said here, is that we're going to tax you more, we're going to take more of your money. So if you're making 300,000 or more in New York, and there's a fair amount of people that make more than 300,000 in New York because New York's so expensive to live there. He was basically saying, you are the enemy of me, of my government. I'm coming for your money. I'm coming for your housing. I'm coming for your way of life. He was unapologetic about that. So they heard that warning and said, we're voting against you.
Look, the income bands that voted against Mamdani were below 30,000 and above 300,000. So below 30,000, you voted against Mamdani. Above 300,000, you voted against Mamdani. And that entire wave, and the biggest income group that voted for Mamdani was 50,000 to 100,000. And that overlaps with the young people. These are young, college-educated. They're disillusioned. They're angry. They're socialists. They've been weaned on socialism. All right, I want to give you one more stat, which is a fascinating one, which is, are you gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender? What percent of New York voters that are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender do you think voted for Mamdani?
Traditionally, I would have said very high. However, knowing what he's been saying, I'm going to go with maybe it's lower than I thought, so 30 to 40%?
81%.
Wow. So
and 15% voted for Cuomo.
Didn't pay attention to the fact this guy supports people that throw gays, lesbians, and transgenders off rooftops, and that's part of the people he supports. That's truly unbelievable.
It is truly unbelievable, given radical Islamists, and they literally want to execute people who are homosexuals. So, of the voters in New York, how many do you think are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender?
I honestly have no idea. What is it?
14%. So 14% of the voters, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, voted 81-15 for Mamdani. How about voters who are straight, which is 86% of the voters? What do you think the breakdown was for Mamdani for voters who are straight?
I'm going to guess it was fairly high as well, based on what you're saying.
It was actually basically a tie. 46% of heterosexual voters voted for Mamdani and 45% for Cuomo. So understand, who elected Mamdani? Young women and gays, lesbians, and transgender. That's what the exit polling shows, which is amazing given that as an Islamist, he believes in very limited rights for women, and he is supportive of views that oppress those who are gay and lesbian. And it's an example of how ideology trumps anyone's self-interest and ignorance. I think ignorance drove a lot of this election.
Yeah, when you break this down and you do the takeaway, I'm going to dive into these numbers more. A lot of people that run races around the country are going to look at these numbers as well, and they're going to say how much of this will apply outside of New York. I think you could certainly apply this data to places like Chicago or Philadelphia or Boston, right? More of these kind of liberal, elitist type cities, I say, on the left. But nationwide, I'll be very interested to see the breakdown. And then this comes to the big question, the big takeaway. Why hasn't a member of the media, I haven't seen this, Grant, I've been in Israel all week, but I've been watching this very tightly. Why has no one in the media asked Mamdani the big question, which I want to know is, all right, well, are you running for president right now? Because if this is the Democratic Party, he has to be on your short list right now. Am I wrong?
Look, I think right now, Mamdani and AOC are the heart of the Democrat Party. And by the way, we saw all of these Democrats that are supposedly mainstream Democrats, although there are no mainstream Democrats left. People like Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, people like Hakeem Jeffries, the House minority leader, rush down to endorse Comrade Mandani. And every one of the Democrats is terrified of the radical left because that's where all of the energy and passion is in the Democrat Party right now.
Truly incredible. Don't forget, we do this show as a podcast 3 days a week. Hit that subscribe or auto download button wherever you get your podcasts. And also, this show is on YouTube as well. We are doing a lot of our episodes now, the majority of them on YouTube. So subscribe to Verdict with Ted Cruz on YouTube. You can watch these episodes as we are all over the world and always in different places. That's kind of the fun of like, which background do we have today? So make sure you grab it there. Don't forget, hit that subscribe, auto download button. And the Senator and I will see you back here on Monday if you are listening on the radio and on this radio station next weekend on the podcast. Have a great week.